Welcome, everyone.
Chris, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Everyone here? Can you hear me okay, Tony?
I can indeed.
Good. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many people here today at our product awareness webinar from Warehouse Partners. I'm Chris Hopkirk, Sales Director at Warehouse Partners. Been looking after Tony for the last 12 years. I'll hand over to just Tony. Who are you?
I'm Tony Gresti. I'm the Managing Director of Warehouse Partners. And before we start, Chris, I'd like to thank you and the team at Adfield for doing this set of presentations. I know how much effort goes in, so thank you for putting them on for us.
It's a shame they couldn't sort our server out this morning because we're running on hotspots at the moment, folks. So it seems to be working fine. So bear with us, and I'm sure you'll have an enjoyable morning, at least enjoyable half an hour. So welcome to the first of 5 product awareness webinars that we'll be hosting over the next 5 months. Essentially, these webinars are set up to help our warehouse partner customers, our resellers of our products. First one today is going to be about netting, and then we are going to be looking at labeling next month, the pallet picks, the new picking system that we make available through our resellers, warehouse partner customers, line marking, and finally integrated safety solutions. I think we're having that in September. Have a little bit of a break for August and holidays and things like that. So welcome, everyone. We're going to split the presentation between myself and Tony, and we're going to start off obviously talking about netting solutions. We want to sort of provide a lot of information about netting so that we can give our warehouse partner customers a little bit more confidence when talking to customers. That's not to say we're not in the background, we're not there to help. We want to give you some technical detail and a bit more knowledge so that we can dispel the sort of the myths about steel mesh and netting, so give you a bit more confidence and tell you probably a little bit more detail about the safety elements of netting. And as a reminder, just to say that the RackNets product's only available via our warehouse partner resellers. That's just in case any of our end user customers have joined us today, but please contact us and we'll direct you in the right company to do that. Presentation take about 20 minutes. Well, if you've got any questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom, which we can answer as we go through. If you want to talk to us at the end, raise your hand at the very end, and we'll have an audio conversation with you. We can answer any questions you might have. Just another thing, the presentation is recorded and will be made available afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to now start the presentation. Just want to make sure we're all set up and ready to rock and roll. Okay, Tony, you okay?
I am. I'm good.
Good, excellent. All right. Well, the first thing first is I'm going to just show you a little bit of video, which is going to talk about the netting, or show you the netting solutions we have, and it will probably just get you in the mood for some of the technical details, some of the knowledge about benefits of the products that we're going to talk about today. Great, thank you for that. Hope that got you in the mood. So we're going to start off with the key product within our portfolio, which is RackNets, the back of rack anti-collapse netting solution. And we're going to probably spend a little bit more time on that than we are other products. I think the detail and the technical information that we're going to provide today is all going to be available, and we can always support you on that. So please don't hesitate to ask questions and engage with us. So obviously we're going to talk about how to fit the racking, what warehouse hazards are, why we do what we do, and the solutions available. Talk a bit about testing and our conclusions, and obviously the sort of net choices, and ultimately the key features and benefits, which we think outweigh quite a lot in terms of comparing it to steel mesh. So why do we fit back of rack protection? I mean, under Section 2, and this is probably a phrase that most people are aware of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, all employers have a duty to provide a safe place of work, a safe environment, and a safe systems of work, so far as reasonably practicable. The safe systems of work is really key to that. Some of the statistics, and the recent statistics, aren't great. They show that 11% of injuries in transportation storage are caused by individuals being struck by moving or falling objects. And sadly, 11 of those were fatal. So we clearly have still some work to do in terms of safety within the warehouse environment, particularly around our product, which is racking. To reduce the risk of goods falling from racks, which may result in injury to personnel, effective preventive measures should be taken. So this is particularly important along where passageways and order picking is. And I know, having sold racking for years, the standard sort of anti-collapse mesh is seen as the standard product for doing that. But we have some enhanced benefits by using netting that's going to really help customers really sort of improve their safety and their health and safety around pedestrians. So why fit back of rack protection? Well, some of these, the key to this is a risk assessment process. And I wonder how many people actually talk about risk assessments when they talk about racking systems and anti-collapse products. We clearly got to identify hazards. We've got to analyze and evaluate the risk associated with that hazard and determine appropriate ways to eliminate it. That's a pretty typical risk assessment. So what Warehouse Partners did is look at this, and we came up and identified two distinct hazards when working with pallet racking that I'm not sure a lot of people think about. First of all, is fairly standard, which is a fall-through situation where pallets are incorrectly loaded into pallet racking, without any deck or by means of pallet support. And this is when they fall through into the rack. In this case, the pallet falls in between the beams and usually results in the pallet and the load coming to rest on the materials underneath. So it's not so much of a problem, but it is if product starts falling off those pallets. So we need to consider that and how we're going to protect against any products falling off the back of that rack in any way. The last and most important one that we came up was fallout. And this came through a lot of testing and a lot of experience, to be perfectly honest, where pallets were pushed off, where a racking level is decked, either with timber, with steel mesh or pallet support bars, particularly at high levels where drivers can't see positioned pallets within the rack. And sometimes we get a situation where a small pallet is positioned at 10 meters, let's say, it's pushed to the back of that rack, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, a pallet is put into that slot by the driver, not knowing that there's a pallet already there. And that can happen where a pallet is pushed right through the rack, and that's not seen. And when pickers are picking underneath that rack, that's when we've got to really consider the hazard and consider what solution we're going to provide. So what I'm going to do now is just hand over to Tony, who's going to talk a bit more about the solution.
Thank you, Chris. I hope I can ad-lib as well as you did then. Right, so when we started off on the RackNets journey, we looked at basically different options because the requirements do have some variation in them. So we came up with 3 systems, what we call the 2.3, 3 and 5 mil systems, and that simply denotes the cord thickness of the net we use. But it's worth pointing out that the 2.3 millimeter system also has slightly lighter duty brackets and cables. Can you move me to the next slide, please, Chris? It doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, there we go. Got it now. So When we talk about, you'll see in some of our documentation, hear us talking about two phrases in particular: contain and restrain. They are slightly different, but when we talk about containment, we talk about any item that falls, but we aim to keep it within the net envelope so it doesn't come away from the rack. We control the fall of it. And when we talk about restrain, the aim here is to try and keep the dislodged item in the air where it started from. So just worth clarifying the differences with those two. In order to help you and your client choose the right system, we did come up with a risk assessment guide. What we look at here is the hazard. Is it an item falling from a pallet, or is it a pallet that you're worried about? What's the likelihood of the accident happening, and what's the severity of it? And by looking at those three things, we can then hopefully help you guide the client into what solution you feel would be best. And again, as Chris already pointed out, all of this should be done in conjunction with a safe system of work on site. And that's for a very good reason. When choosing the correct system, we have to take into consideration that pallets come in different shapes and sizes and weights. And in the event of the most severe mishandling, we don't want to create an accident that's bigger than the one we're trying to prevent. So when the severe loads are introduced, we do have to let go of the product, otherwise we might knock the rack over, and that's a bigger accident. So it is important that we have a safe system of work in line with the solution that's chosen. Can you take me back a screen, Chris, please? Sorry. Thank you. So the difference between mesh and netting is quite significant, actually. A netting system is designed to spread the energy of the impact around the whole of the system. So it spreads the energy through the cords, through the cables, into the bracketry, and absorbs it through the racking. Meshing doesn't work like that. Mesh is a rigid system, what we call a rigid system. And it's designed for the connectors to fail and the panels to fail in order not to create an impact that's bigger than or an accident that's bigger than the one you're trying to prevent. Fundamentally, the RackNet system comes in three component parts. We have the connectors and the brackets that go between the racking and the net itself. They are rigid and attached through the coffin slots or the bolt holes, the bracing holes. And then to that, we attach what I think is the cleverest bit of the system, which is gripple technology. So eye bolt at one end of a cable and a gripple at the other. Both of those are manufactured at a factory and will behave consistently irrespective of how the job is installed. So we have confidence there that particular part of the system will work in the event of an accident. And then to that, we install the net using carabiner clips. Now, I think also wanted to point out at this time, when we install a net, when you install a net, we don't tension the cable, you hand tighten the cable. The net is made to order, and the installation of the net is what tensions the system and the cables to create a safe system. So when we started the RackNets journey back in 2008, we did some computer modeling, but as we started seeing getting bits of feedback, we did decide that it would be useful to do a more realistic test. So in 2016, we took a yard at a farm, we built some racking, and we did a test as best we could of the 3 and 5 mil system in relatively realistic conditions. Worth pointing out at this stage that there is no standard ISO or CMA test for back of rack safety. The closest thing that we found was the machine guard test, which is in an EU directive, which is a pendulum test. And we don't feel it's particularly appropriate. I'll explain why we don't feel it's a particularly appropriate test now. That's gone too far. Don't worry, Chris, I've got it. Of course, Chris, can you take me back to the standards test or the pendulum test page, please? Thank you. You should back one more. Yeah. Thank you. So the machine guard test was devised because normally machine guarding is to stop an item that is let go by a robot. So it's a relatively low weight test at a relatively high speed. So I believe the pendulum test is a 20 or 25 kilo pendulum that's swung into some mesh panels to see how the panels behave. But we didn't feel that was a relatively or a particularly appropriate test because in a warehouse you have relatively heavy objects traveling at lower speed. So we wanted to replicate something that was a bit more realistic to what we might see in a warehouse. In order to achieve that, we built, I think it was 6 bays of racking, and we used dynamic roller beds to be able to drop a pallet onto them and allow the force of gravity to pull a 1 kilo load. We used a UBC water container full of water, so we knew it was what weighed 1 ton, to pull that towards the racking at various different gradients. As you can see in the drawing there, how it was designed. Also seen that a little bit on the video, but so we set the incline bed in various locations within the rack, in the middle at height and in the corners lower down, just to see how the net would behave. I think it's worth pointing out at this stage, Chris, that we were testing the net here, not the integrity of the racking. We were trying to gain information as to how the netting system behaved. We did have a look at the racking. There was no damage on any of the tests to the rack structure. But it's worth pointing out at this stage that we were only looking at how our item behaved. So at height in the middle, we compared mesh with netting. So this was a fairly low velocity test. The incline bed wasn't particularly steep. On a mesh panel, the brackets failed as you would expect them to, but also the panels became damaged. So there would be a fairly extensive repair to be done there if that happened at high level. And we carried out the same test using our 5mm system with what we call nodal cable tie. So we cable tie at the beam connectors in order to give the system some more rigidity in the middle. And again, we saw some failure of the cable ties, which is the cable tie absorbs the energy, and you'll see that in the video. So if you watch closely, you'll see the cable ties fail when the 1 ton load comes into contact with the net. We then wanted to carry out a much higher velocity test in the region of 7,500 to 8,000 joules. We calculated would be pretty good. In fact, we'd actually had feedback from a site in the UK where somebody had managed to pick up a beam with a mesh deck on and replicated this accident. So we were able to do a fairly good replication of an accident we'd had some information about. The mesh panel, as you can imagine, 1 ton load traveling at 0.5 meter a second, the mesh panel did not survive particularly well. It didn't really reduce the velocity very much. And we've got a video to demonstrate that now. Did you see that, Chris, or not? Should we play that again?
Yeah, I saw it. But play it again. Do you want me to play that? So I'm going to take over now because I think Tony's lost where he's at the moment. So as you could see, we did do a test with steel mesh, and you can see the difference between the netting and the steel mesh. what happened there. We then were looking at different speeds in terms of the 5mm net. At this point, the IBC fell off the rack and fell into the net. So this is pretty much a replica of the same position, but where we put the IBC in with the netting in the corner of the rack. And you can see that it successfully stopped that. Okay. So moving on, the conclusions really at the end of the day is the 5mm net with the addition of no nodal cable ties provides the best compromise between falling debris protection and rack integrity available. It's best on the market as far as we can see. In tests, RackNets have shown to significantly reduce the energy of your falling pallet, even at forces which led to the damage itself. So we are looking at really high velocity, high energy falling into the net. RackNets afford warehouse operators a flexible and a robust fixed risk reduction from falling objects from pallet racking. We're talking about pallets here, and I don't believe there's any solution on the market that will help contain and restrain a pallet of 1 ton load. Impacts equal or less severe than 1,000 kilograms IBC impacting on a 1.5 meters per second have been shown to result in no permanent damage to the RackNets system or its attachment. So we firmly believe that this is the right product for containing and restraining pallets. We acknowledge that steel mesh has its position, and I'm now going to talk about the net choices available. This is the bit that, thanks Tony, we lost you a little bit there, but thanks for talking about the technical aspects, because as a salesman, I like to talk about the choices and the benefits. So let's go on to the best bits of it. The reason we're talking about netting as opposed to steel mesh is that there is a massive difference between the two products. So, you know, we'd rather you don't compare them really, because if a customer is concerned about pedestrian safety, then a back of rack netting, and he's concerned about pallets falling off, then he needs to use a netting system that contains and restrains. However, we do supply a 2.3mm net which will act very similar to steel mesh, and that will slow down and contain 50 kg products. We then go into a 3mm net, which we would use where the net is predominantly to the floor, up to about 500mm, and then a 5mm net, which is stronger, which will help and contain and restrain 1,000 kg pallets, particularly when your first beam level is above sort of 1,200mm, 1,800mm. But we can advise you on that for sure. Key features and benefits. Okay, these are the bits that really you want to be talking to your customer about. It creates a far safer working environment for employees. When it's used as a suitable safe system that works. So when you're talking to customers, this isn't the sort of catch-all for everything. This isn't the, we've got to consider forklift trucks, we've got to consider pallets, we've got to consider all sorts of things where pedestrians are. So a safe system at work and a risk assessment will bring that key product hazards to, you know, as assessing the hazards for netting. It's available in various sizes and strengths. It is strong and lightweight, and it's easy to install. Strong and lightweight, basically, it's very, very easy to transport. It's very cost effective to transport. You might have 10 pallets of steel mesh and 1 pallet of netting. There's a massive benefit of that, particularly at the moment with prices of steel at the moment, and deliveries. RackNets, they're easy to install, 2 to 3 times quicker, we believe, than steel mesh. So there's an added benefit in terms of on-site savings there. It's made to measure, so there's no cutting down or edging work on site. It's all edged in our premises in Warrington, and big benefits. Easy to remove if you've got problems with adjusting beams or rack repairs. So it's easy to remove and to attach again. It's available in various colours. We'd like to stick to blue and black as a standard, but obviously, you know, aesthetically it does look great if it's in different colours. We've done green, we've done red. It won't dent or corrode like steel. And essentially the lifetime cost of ownership is significantly reduced. You don't get the damage that you do with steel where you have to replace it. It's flexible, not rigid construction. And retrieval of goods is really quite simple. It's made of safer, it's safer and easier to do. And of course, the main key thing here is designed to contain loads up to 1,000 kgs within the net envelope. We've got some other netting solutions, which I'm going to go through here, just give you a bit of a feel for what else we're doing in the market at the moment and what's getting more and more traction. Mes nets, particularly on handrail to stop products being kicked off through mezzanine floors, a very economic solution there. But also where we're on 3-tier mezzanine floors where people are concerned about products being thrown over from a health and safety view, but also from a security point of view. Keg nets, we've just done a job for Heineken where they had a potential for block stack kegs falling over outside, so we've supplied a keg net solution there through one of our trade customers. Carpet nets, excellent way of helping forklift drivers putting carpets away. At 4 and 5 meters, it's really hard to know when you've gone too far. And obviously with steel mesh on the back, that just gets hit and gets damaged. But with netting, because there's some flexibility in it, they're alerted to the fact of how far they've sort of reached in with their carpet. Block stack nets, just done a project for a company that stacks very lightweight cans which have the potential for falling over, and having a full netting solution there has protected pedestrians working close to these areas of storage. Conveyor protection nets, we've been doing a lot of these, particularly for suppliers to Amazon, where we're putting netting in, particularly on packaging conveyor nets, where the potential for different size of packaging can fall off. Aisle protection, whether it's the end of racks or down warehouse walls to protect pedestrian walkways. And rack end, frame ends, and at the ends of drive-in runs, those sort of systems where we've got potential for product falling off the edge. And finally, walkway protection nets right at the end. And on these, we can have standoffs so that you have enough space to put your pallet away when you're turning into the rack. So almost to the end, warehouse partners, what do? We're here to give you the most help. Technical sales support, we can go on site visits. We have technical support managers that can help you with your customers, give you good advice. We can provide technical data sheets and branding collateral, images, videos. We can provide installation advice and videos, which are all online on our warehouse partner website. Risk assessment calculators there for you to use, drawing support through AutoCAD, and provide samples if that's required. Anything you need to make your communication with your customer easy and fluid, we're here to support that. And to remind you, all back of rack netting is supplied through the trade. We don't supply direct to customers. So just as a reminder before we finish or to take questions, just like to say, obviously we've got some seminars coming up. Next month will be labelling, and we'll be talking about how the different applications of labelling and the materials that we can use. Pallet picks in June, line marking on the 21st of July, and a session on integrated warehouse solutions, just showing you how we can provide the whole solution, including line marking, labelling, barriers if you want it, to your customers. Just like to thank you all. I think I've lost Tony. If you've got any questions, I don't know if the little hand is raised, but I've got one question that's come through on the Q&A. Can you train our installation teams? Yeah, more than happy to train the installation teams. We can either get your teams up to our warehouse at Warrington, where we have netting up here. We can show you how to install it. Or if you want someone to come to site on day one of installation, then we're quite happy to do that as well. Anything that's going to make your life easier, we're here to help you. So I think that's about it. I can't see a raised hand, but if you've got a question, you want to put it on the Q&A, then just whack it through, and we'll try and answer it. It looks like everyone is really satisfied with everything we've done today. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for listening to me and Tony. Apologies for the internet server at the moment, but I'm glad I was able to finish. Please take care, and good luck out there. Thank you.